Well, the last time we were together, I was starting the fitment process of these back curve framework for the rear panel for the rear seat. And I've been working on this, trying to get it fitted up, and I've made a few adjustments and changes that I could not show you and just continue on and saying, well, this is just how it works. But I've run into, I don't know if I'd call them complications, but new things have surfaced that I want to show you some of the process that I've gone through and why I changed what I did. So this is a pattern that I had put together based off the old original back that I had. And you could see where I had it contoured pretty close to this shape here. So this was the pattern that I bent my wood to, and also what I was expecting to use when I fit this framework onto the rear of this coach. And I took the iron off of the old back off of the patterns that I'm using, and I thought, you know, this iron is going to be the measurement that I need to find out where this curve comes. But as I mentioned, this iron didn't come off of this 8-passenger, it came off of the 11. So I was running into kind of a quandary is, where do I put this iron? I didn't have anything to base that relationship on. The overall length, yeah, that's a given, but just where does it set? And so I was struggling with, how do I place this framework and where does it go this direction? So I went to an original body that I have that is still intact, and these irons are still intact on that body. And that body is very similar to this without the driver's seat attached to it. It's just this portion of the body still intact, all original. So I measured from the front of the body on the driver's seat and went back to where that iron set with this rear panel still installed, still in place. And I came up at this junction here at 114 inches. So that gave me a reference point of 114 at this corner, which is the inside of this framework as it comes up. This is where the cross framing would go across on that. So I took a light cord and I held this iron into place at 114 inches. So that gives me the location where this iron is, comparing 11-passenger original to this 11-passenger that I'm duplicating. So at this junction here of the framing that's going to go up to the back and the main frame, this is where it's going to sit. Well, I also have the original irons that came off this 11-passenger that I'm replacing, and this is the iron that is on the outside of the curvature. There's a 3/8 panel that comes inside, and then the framework comes up, and then there's another heavy frame that comes inside on the body and sandwiches this whole joint system to give it strength and reinforcement. So these irons are also original off of the one that I am rebuilding. Now, as part of the skeleton of the old one that I have, this is the right side, which I'm actually working on right now on my new replacement. But this right side is still all intact. The iron that I am referring to that is on the outside is this iron here. I actually took that off of the left side. So just to double check, with that being disassembled, I want to put it up against this iron here to make sure it is still the same and it hasn't changed since I disassembled it. So this is that iron that I just showed you that I had clamped to the body, and when I lay it up against this one that is not been disassembled, you can see that they are both exactly the same. This one happens to be on the left side, this would be the right, but I can use this as a pattern for whether I am accurate on my right side as well, since they're interchangeable. So when I disassembled this off of the left side, I put a mark here with my metal marker at this line as it lines up with the end of my joint work here. So that sets right in that position there. So that's where I'm going to clamp it into place. And just to make sure that I'm up tight, I'm going to put a second clamp right here at the end. So this is going to be the curve that I want my framework to follow as I come up to that iron up on the top. So this gives me the contour that my frame needs to be coming toward the top, and this iron is now held in a position where I need to finish up at. So I have my start and I have my finish. I need this framework to connect these two. Now this is the frame pattern that I had laid up against that old back. And when I lay it in here, if I just put my foot there, you can see that I'm off. But if I try to follow the contour of this iron, you can see how far off I am up here on the top. So this is what was causing me some consternation. I was kind of puzzled at why did it fit the wood on my old back, but it doesn't even seem to be close when I try to reference the iron. When I take that again and put it against my wood, it would fit right in there. You see how close that is? Why is it not close at all according to the iron? So this rear panel is laying on its side, but on the back there are 4 bent pieces of wood and they're capped with 1/8-inch iron. Well, these are to keep any chests or luggage from chewing up against the back panel. Well, I had noticed that on the bottom, all of these were sprung away from the body panel. All of them are that way, but it's not real uncommon to have a screw come loose and these would just spring out on an old carcass like this. But it got me to thinking, what has happened here? When I took my pattern and put it up against my back panel, you can see we're relatively close. You can see how far off we are from these bumper irons here. This matches my wood frame, but it doesn't match this. So I started investigating a little deeper. And it is the same effect that I'm finding here. This doesn't match the same curve as this iron. So this is the change that I made. This is the pattern that I used at first. This is a pattern that I ended up making that does follow the contour of this iron, and it does match up to the placement of this iron on the top, that is at 114 inches from the front. That one fits, as opposed to this one. You can see how much more severe that bend is, and it doesn't fit. And this is what I bent my wood to, was this pattern, not this pattern. So no matter how much I change the angle of this foot or the toe, if I brought this back to match the placement of the top, my iron and my wood aren't even close. And this is one of those cases when I have to decide, do I trust old wood or do I trust my iron? In this case, I trust my iron. When I put that rear brace up, just clamped to the seat frame, it was within 1 inch of the right position of where I have it tied off now with that string. That's how close it was. So it took nothing at all to put that at the 114 inches. So my iron there is accurate. My iron that comes up that is going to be the brace for this whole joint system is accurate. What I have removed matches the iron that I have not removed. So in this case, I am inclined to trust my iron and not the wood. And I bent the wood off of a pattern off of my old wood. And something has happened to that old wood that it is more severe bend in this area here. So I ended up with my new bent wood on this pattern, but this pattern is actually what I need it to be to match the iron. So that's the change that I made. I did all this adjustment, made my new pattern, and I could easily just go on and say, this is now where I'm going to go. I have it all figured out, and you wouldn't have a clue what I did. So my brand new wood is bent on this pattern. How can I still use it? So you've seen me do this before, so this is redundant. This is part of what I bent initially. This had the knot on one end, so I cut it off, and it ended up being too short, so I didn't use it. But this is the initial bend, and this is the initial pattern that I used. And you can see how that fit right up. But when I put my new pattern on here, you can see if I rotated it up this far, I'm way too short on this end. This doesn't match anymore. So what I did is I put my pieces on this stove, and I made wood blocks to go inside. Would be about like so, and I put a clamp across here, let this get really hot on my stove, and I relaxed it out to where it fits. And these are what I ended up with. You can see how much more relaxed they are than my original bend. This was my original bend. This is now the pattern that I need actually that's going to work on these coach backs. So that's what I did differently. I was able to use what I bent initially, but because I know how to adjust wood with heat, I ended up being able to salvage these, readjust them, and they're going to work. And that's where I'm at now. So that's what I meant when I said I could show you how I'm just going to take this and see, yep, it all just matches right up. And I figured out what this angle needs to be and put it on. And you would never know the difference that this came from this. I had to make this adjustment in these to make those work. But they are workable. And now I have all my pieces cut out that are adjusted appropriately, and now they do work. So why take the time to show you what I did but yet not show you? Part of it was I was in the process of figuring all this stuff out, and that is the challenge of restoration versus building new. I'm trying to match wood to the iron. I took and made a pattern off of the wood, and it ended up being that the wood, for whatever reason, had changed. It became more severe in this bend here than what the iron says it needs to be. And that really, honestly, is why a lot of people don't like restorations. It's far more challenging than it is just to build it new, make a new design, make it everything work. It's not a problem, but that's not what this is about. It is trying to go back to how it was and figuring out just how was it. I thought this was it, but the iron says this was it. So with all that being said, if this is now my pattern that I want to use, I have my first two heavy frames that are 2 3/4 inches wide, and I have the outside curvature matching my pattern. Should be right about there. It doesn't take much to move this either direction and it becomes off. So I think I'm right there. So I'm a little thick on the upper end, and the inside isn't quite so critical as I want a consistent curvature outside, but I want to be down to that 1.125" on the inside, so I can just bandsaw the inside off now that I have my outside curve where I want it, and that'll give me the main shape of the heavy outside main frames. So then these 1-inch frames, I will end up trying to find out that same pattern. I'm going to match the outside curve as far as I can, but I see this one begins to vary off here. But I have plenty of room on both sides that I can make that adjustment here as well. This is going to be my overall length. So these are going to be a set. 3 1-inch frames and 2 2 3/4-inch frames. And I want to have them fairly uniform. Well, I'm floating a number of pieces like this that are on a curve. The top rollers on my planer are really pretty handy sometimes. You just automatically all put them in the same position, and then I can float them together. Well, the 2 heavy main frames, I'm going to use those as my starting points, and then the 3 1-inch frames, I'm going to fit those in between. Now I've got these pretty close, and when I had them all clamped together, I ran a straight edge mark on both ends so that when I put them on my table here, my table saw, I can kind of line them back up to where I had those. You can see I have just little slight variations here, but when I put my pattern on, that really doesn't matter because I'm going to trim those off here. Back at this point is where I want everything to be fairly uniform. In the top end, I also put a mark to try to help me remember where these were. I have some little variations, but again, this is the end where I think I'm going to end up trimming these off. But I'm going to actually do that when I have the bottom fitted first. Then I'll use my iron to actually know where this is going to be. This form here, my pattern, is actually where I'm going to end up at. I do have slight little variations on the inside, but that's not what's critical. It's where the panel fits up on the outside that I'm most concerned about. So hopefully I have all my bases covered. I'm going to go ahead and fit my first one to this angle here because I know my form is where I want it to be. And this corner here is where I want them all to be the same. That's why I tried to stack them up to where they're uniform. So this point wants to be my starting point. So I'd like to have that mark go clear across. So I have the same starting spot in all my framework. And if I use my same pattern on all of them, this angle should all be the same. Now I'm not so concerned about the toe length. I'm actually going to trim that when I have them in place. So I'm going to bandsaw it kind of close, but I'm actually going to put it on my sander, and that'll give me a nice flat surface on this right angle. So as I clamp this into place, I want this edge or this corner to come up to this corner, and this lower line here should line up with this line here on the main body frame. So I want these two to intersect right there. You can see my top comes up right where it needs to be, and I'll put a little pencil mark there, but that should line up right with my pattern. And if this frame was to actually stay on this 11 passenger, I would trim my toe right there and then put a slight round over. But I'm actually using this 11 to do all my sizing and get my angles right, and I'm going to transfer this over to my 8. So this was my pencil mark. I want to do a quick check and make sure it matches my pattern, and check that I'm flush here on the bottom, and come up to the top. See, there's where my iron mark was. So I'm actually going to trim it to my pattern. That's an 1/8 inch difference, and if I need to, I can bring that back 1/8 of an inch. And I'll double check my pattern again. Yeah, see, my iron is about an 1/8 inch down. If I pick that up just that 1/8 inch, it sets right on there. So I'll trim it to my pattern length. Put this in place on my 8. I want this corner to match up right there. And this will be my toe length with a slight round over. So if I put this back on my 11, and my toe lengths are pretty close. Evidently my back frame is pretty similar. So this is where this one's going to live on my 8 passenger. So this isn't the final fit yet because we're still down on this plane of the main frame. I actually have to joint this up, so it's going to have a stair step that will joint this so it'll sit partially on top of this frame, and the remaining will set down on this frame. We'll do that in the future. So I should be able to do that to my next heavy main frame, the same starting point. I should be able to fit this one to the same right side, and since they're symmetrical, it'll work for my left side as well. The original left side iron off of that 11 passenger has a little kink to it, so I'm not going to clamp it into place. If I use this same iron on the right side that I think is really in good shape and the shape is correct, I can use that, and then I can reshape the bent one for the left side, and then of course I'm going to make new irons for this 8 passenger. So that's going to give us our main structure for the rear panel. Now we have those 3 lighter 1-inch frames that have to go in as well. There's 2 that set just inside these main frames, and there's one that sits right in the middle. And I should be able to take the same pattern and use that as my starting point. And you would think maybe they would have to be a little different because they would be sitting on top instead of down on the main frame. but actually these are jointed in down 1/4 of an inch, so they don't go quite as deep as these are. This is a 3/8, but these get jointed in 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to start out with this same pattern as I have on my 2 outside mainframes. So it'll be the same process. Use these lines here as the same starting point, and they'll be the same as my 2 heavy outside frames. So I'm not going to trim the toe links here yet because they still have to be jointed down, which will change that position a little bit. I just kind of have them clamped in place before I do that joint work. But I think looking across, they're all going to be right where they need to be. There will end up being a top frame that comes across here that will line all these up, but I need to do my bottom joint work first. Kind of do some fine tuning. But getting the framework in for this rear panel, you can see how it starts to give more of a complete shape of what this coach is like, and that back seat will be jointed in right across here. Step in the right direction. Appreciate coming along. Thanks for watching.